if you're anything like my age, chances are it was a Mini or a Beetle. I adored my Mini. I loved it so much I used to polish the exhaust pipe for its entire length. But in time that love faded. What had seemed cute became claustrophobic, and in the end I was only too willing to trade style for space. I wanted a back seat big enough for two adults who weren't Ronnie Corbett and wee Jimmy Cranky. And I wanted a boot big enough to sneak at least two other friends into a pop festival without paying. I wanted it to look good, be a hoot to drive and cost buttons to buy, which is why my second car was one of these. Marketed as the small car that isn't, the 1968 Ford Escort offered affordable space and found 150,000 buyers in its first year. From a miserly £629, you got a new body style, a new structure, a new engine and a new transmission. The Ford Escort suited its time perfectly. 7 years on, the Escort changed its shape. The Mark II offered more style, more space and more choice, with 19 models in the range. But easily the most desirable of all the Mark IIs for anyone with red blood in their veins and a 3/4 length leather car coat was the Rally Sport 2000, the RS. Identified by its distinctive tailgate spoiler, those tough-looking 4-spoke alloys and the angular quad headlamp cowl. There's only 110 horsepower under here, and that seems almost inadequate by modern standards. But forget the figures. This was and is a raw, exhilarating driving experience. Powerful medicine, undiluted by modern electronic aids like ABS or traction control. Back in the 70s, the RS was the suburban supercar. But then along came the 80s, and if you were queuing to buy a Cabbage Patch doll, wearing a rah-rah skirt, suede pixie boots and dealy bobbers, you couldn't have looked more 80s than the Escort XR3. With its proud display of nonsensical numbers and letters and its aggressively boxy styling, the XR3 was the prized possession of the loads of money generation. And up and down the country, XR3s could be heard screeching their skinny rubber outside wine bars in a courtship ritual that is timeless. The 80s were fun, but for the ultimate Escort we had to wait till the 90s. That car was the RS Cosworth. Who would have thought today that a car that started life as the motoring equivalent of Corporation Pop should end up as vintage Krug, the champagne supernova of Escorts, the RS Cosworth. Distinguished, of course, by this quite ridiculous rear spoiler. Now, Ford will tell you that it's so high so that the driver can see out of the rear window, when we all know that the real reason is so that you get to look like a bad, bad boy. Last time I drove one of these, it was a hugely modified example that had recorded a scarcely believable 630 brake horsepower. It was insanely fast and massively difficult to drive, which is kind of missing the point because the whole philosophy behind the Escort RS Cosworth was that it should be a usable supercar. With 227 brake horsepower and 4-wheel drive, you could go to the shops or you could go completely bonkers. It was entirely up to you. And of course, the pub fact that every Cosworth bore knows about the Escort was that it wasn't an Escort. Underneath the Escort body was Sierra floor pan, Sierra suspension, and a Sierra engine. While some could never possibly bring themselves to drive an Escort, no matter how good, others looked beyond the badge and revelled in the Ferrari-baiting performance. But the truth is that right from the start, the Escort was a classless car. The Mini never grew up. And neither did the Beetle. And don't talk to me about that new Beetle, because that's just a golf in a party hat. But the Escort evolved. It changed to meet the demands of a market with ever-increasing expectations. And that's why it's been a bestseller for 30 years or more. And one thing is for certain, if you lot keep buying them, Ford will keep building them.